So Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art of harmonizing the life energy, which is sometimes called chi or ki, as it moves congruently or not through the body in what we call energy pathways. And we can control how that energy moves by adjusting or tweaking what we call safety energy locks. And in acupuncture, they may be called points. But the major difference there is that there are only 26 of these safety energy locks in Jin Shin Jyutsu, left and right of the spine and in the arm. And when our energy is not moving congruently, we place our hands on these safety energy locks, palms down, back of hand or thumbs. And this allows any blockages in the energy pathway to release and the energy to flow more congruently. It's a very simple process, but it relies largely on us surrendering, exhaling to allow the energy to do its job in a more harmonious way. So we're looking for harmony. We're not looking to fix anything. We're looking for balance between energy locks in the body. And when that balance comes, our soul, heart, mind, and body tend to work more in harmony with one another. So without further ado, as it's that Mystery Presenter Friday, let's find out who that mystery presenter is. And the mystery presenter is mystery presenter, where are you?
Oh,
there you are.
Oh my gosh.
There you are.
Oh no, that was a mistake.
There you are. Today's
Hello.
mystery presenter is, I'll let him introduce himself. Do you want to move up slightly or?
Yeah, let me grab something. I can do it a little bit.
There you go.
Oh, that's a little better.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we can see you. So,
Well, my name is Mark Hovis, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And 29 years ago, just about, if you're into astrology, a Saturn return, 29 years ago, I got a flyer in the mail. I was currently a second grade teacher. I was teaching elementary school at that point for about 15 years. And the flyer just said something about self-help. And it said something called Jin Shin Jyutsu, which I'd never heard of. So I thought, well, I like the idea about self-help. I better go to this workshop. So I did on a Saturday. And I was so impressed with what the theory and how it works and how well it works, that 3 weeks later, I'm booked on a plane to Scottsdale to take my first 5-day intensive. And I was so lucky to be there with Philomena Dooley back then in 1993. So that was my start, and I've been with it ever since. I was so excited about it. I was just floating in air that whole first 5 days that I had this little dream that maybe I could do this as a practitioner. So the very next month, I went to Dallas and had my first meeting and wonderful 5-day class with Wayne Hackett. And that was fabulous. So the short story is that a year later, I quit teaching and began to practice Jin Shin Jyutsu out of my house as a practitioner. It was slow going for a while in dear old Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I later, about 2 years later, I went through a 2-year acupuncture course in a nearby city here in Oklahoma, and then eventually worked my way up to take the national certification exam for acupuncture and passed that the first time. So I have been doing Jin Shin Jyutsu and acupuncture for approximately 26, 27 years. And I use self-help all the time on myself, and I give self-help all the time to my patients. Every morning before I wake up, I do the main central to kind of get things started. And it's enough about me. I can share a little bit about some of my experiences about self-help. How am I doing, Terry? Am I doing all right?
If you could just raise yourself up slightly and
So-
maybe move back a little bit, because your face is filling the whole. That yeah,
Oh,
yeah, that's a little better. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm reluctant to show my whole face. It's quite
We
a
can
shock.
see, yeah.
But so let me just start to say that I found in my workaday world, at the end of the day, I'm getting a little bit weary and tired. And then sometimes I'll have a new patient, which means I have to be more focused to listen well and to understand what they're going through and relate well to them and explain to them more than an average patient. I had to explain what it is and what I do and what is Jin Shin Jyutsu and how does it work. And so I get kind of tired by the end of the day. So before I take a new patient at the end of the day, I do a spleen flow. As you that practice Jin Shin Jyutsu know how important a spleen flow is. It's super helpful. It gives me an instant boost. It takes the nervousness out of my stomach, and I just get an instant charge. In the Jin Shin Jyutsu practitioner classes, it's often said if you only have time for one organ flow, to do the spleen flow. The spleen has a duty or extra facility power to distribute the chi to all the other organs. And in the Western medicine, the spleen isn't held to be super important, I think. You can lose your spleen or you can have it taken out and you can still live. But in the Orient, in China and Japan, they revere the spleen very highly, as it is a powerful organ to keep us energized. So doing the spleen flow is a real helpful thing to do, and it's easy to do. Terry, do you do flows on the show or do you just talk about them?
Yes, we can do flows, and generally speaking, I would say just do the first couple of steps of a longer flow. But knowing how the spleen is taught in the self-help book, you could start on any of those points, any of those safety energy locks. Yeah.
Well, I know myself, and I teach my patients that the first step is called the anchor step, which really means it's sort of the foundation of the whole flow. So we can do the first step if you just like to sit on the fingertips of one hand, the fingertips being that they're touching the tailbone, and then the other hand, whichever hand is left over, you go to the same side leg. In my case, it's my left hand that's available. So I go to the left energy lock number 5, which is on the inside of the ankle, on my left ankle, between the ankle bone and the heel. I think it's a good idea to do that as I'm in the spotlight and talking a lot and so forth. That talking usually uses up a lot of stomach and spleen energy, actually. So this is just a way for me to conveniently give me a boost while I continue to talk. So you can hold this here as long as you like. Probably a good 3 or 4 or 5 minutes is a good time for that. Years ago, my wife was in the corporate world and she had a meeting of other representatives like herself. She, if you might guess, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you might work in the oil industry. So she was in the HR in a large corporation, and she had a meeting in California, and I was happy to tag along and go with her and enjoy some vacation time after that meeting. But that first evening when we arrived, there was kind of like a cocktail party, and they served wine and cheese and crackers and fried foods and so forth. And it was all okay, but at the end of a long travel day and in the evening, then we went back to our room and I got ready for bed and was lying there in bed and realized how much heartburn I had from all that, you know, heavy, rich food. So lying there, very uncomfortable with this heartburn, I thought for a moment, I thought, well, maybe I should hold my thumb that helps with the frequency that the stomach lives on. But I instinctively went to my middle finger to help with liver and gallbladder. As you might imagine, with fried foods and cheese, your gallbladder needs to excrete bile and help deal with that food. And just holding my middle finger, I would say within a total of about not even 10 seconds, that heartburn just began to just go away. It just relaxed, just flushed it out of my body. It was just incredible how quickly that holding my middle finger helped. So that was one of my very early realizations about the power of Jin Shin Jyutsu. I really pick up a lot about self-help by having issues myself and want to get that taken care of. So here in the last, it was in January, I got a dose of the COVID-19. I had a vaccine 6 months earlier, but I didn't feel real well. I had one bad night where there was kind of like chills and fever. And I just was not a very happy person that one night. I got over it in about 2 days. It didn't stay with me long, but that first night was difficult. And like so many illnesses that the immune system has to work hard at, viruses and so forth, my joints were achy, especially my hip joints. So I went to one of my self-help books and found that what is excellent for the large joints, as you might know, is the liver flow. So I just lie there in bed and did the liver flow, and within 10 or 15 minutes of having completed that flow, it was like totally relaxed. The tension in my hips just let go. So I was able to go to sleep. So that was a great example of liver flow. What the old culture in China and later Japan realized is that the organs themselves have their physiological metabolic functions, but they also have a wider, greater theater, if you like, greater influence on the body and the mind. The body and the mind are inseparable. So that's why we can relate attitudes with different organ flows, like with liver, gallbladder, it's generally anger. It's also frustration. And I find it's also one of my family favorite is the fear the right thing won't happen. So those out of balance feelings and attitudes can be supported by correcting the energy of the organs that are related to these attitudes. So and also besides attitudes, the organ systems also relate to different sensory organs, like the liver gallbladder is especially helpful for vision, eyesight. That's its strong point. Too much visual exertion will wear on that frequency. It will burden that frequency, and it impacts the liver gallbladder, but it also just impacts your flexibility of your body and mind. So to help flexibility, liver gallbladder system is a way to help. So there's in different organ systems, there's different activity, different lifestyle activities that burden these different systems, these different frequencies. In acupuncture, they call them elements. In Jin Shin Jyutsu, we call them depths. First depth through sixth depth in the body realm. Then there's a seventh depth of the energy moving through your hands. And then there's a higher energy called eighth depth. And then there's finally ninth depth. Ninth depth is just the beyond the beyond. A lot of what you read and study in the healing arts of Asia have their roots in Taoism. Not so much in a religious sense, but more of a scientific sense. Anyway, with the organs and their different influences and what lifestyles influences can bother them, for example, in our culture, we sit a lot at the office and home and so forth, but sitting too much, as you might know, burdens the earth frequency or first depth in Jin Shin Jyutsu. So sitting too much and thinking too much. We humans in general are great overthinkers. We overthink, and as you probably know, we're probably thinking of the 8,000 things we thought of yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. So excess thinking burdens that first depth earth frequency and too much sitting. So the remedy for that is just to practice self-help in the earth-related flows like stomach and spleen and all of the earth frequency energy locks, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. But also learning to let our minds go and not think too much of our thoughts, to let our thoughts and our thinking patterns relax, and to get up and move more. With earth frequency, you think, well, it's a stability, it's a grounds you. Well, it does, but that frequency is also what enables you to move. And if that frequency is healthy, then you can move well. So that's a wonderful energy area to work on, holding your thumb. And there's a sequence in Mary Burmeister's self-help books. She gives a greater sequence on helping with earth element by holding by holding fingers, and also doing the energy flows of spleen and stomach. And 1 through 4 energy lock will help that. The burden for the kidney bladder system is standing too much. And of course, it's fear, which is, I think, the key to all of our negative attitudes goes through fear. Something was pointed out a long time ago to me about competition. You know, I grew up loving some sports and being active and appreciating playing games and wanting to win, but someone pointed out that competition really is based in fear. And what that means is that you're wishing to outdo the other person or outdo your own previous time. And it's sort of a desperate kind of attitude, which is kind of fear-based. So I thought that was it. It's kind of giving me a new attitude about how to look at competition. Walking too much or too fast or running too much is difficult for the frequency that supports the heart and the small intestine. And let's see, too much visual is hard on third depth for liver gallbladder. We covered, let's see, oh yes, it's the lung, large intestine, the second depth. What burdens that is grief, and of course, guilt goes with that. I understand that in Tibetan, they really don't have a good word for guilt. And I thought for a long time, well, that's awfully odd that they don't appreciate guilt, but they just said, it's just a total waste of your life. Well, I grew up thinking you're supposed to feel guilty for certain wrongdoings or mistakes, but they're saying that just acknowledge your mistake and get over it, let it go. So I like learning to let go of guilt. It's very frequent and prevalent through many of our Western cultures, especially some of the religions. So back to self-help. Another one of my favorite flows, which was just so brilliantly put together by Jiro Murai, is what they call the umbilicus flow. It's in your self-help books, and it's really simple. You know, we can do it for a moment. If you'll put one hand on the opposite shoulder neck, that's energy lock number 11. So where the shoulder and the neck meet, you can just kind of hang your hand right there on that. The other hand, I think it's easier to go around the back and hold the opposite middle neck. So that's where I'm at right here. So the umbilicus flow is not really a physical organ, but it's a function that is taking place within their body, in our bodies at all times. It helps with kind of keeping the three burners, what the Chinese call the three burners, or the three, well, let's see, the three heaters. The three burners are basically chest, then solar plexus area, and then lower abdomen. Those are generally those are talked of as the three burners. Jiro named the triple heater system that acupuncture calls the triple heater meridian. He named it umbilicus because it originates in the umbilicus, but it's a super powerful functional energy that regulates the temperature and water in the three burners. So it's a super helpful function on the body. And I didn't look it up lately on what it helps. Maybe Terry could help me, but it helps. Of course, it helps the joints in the neck and the shoulders, but I believe it helps anxiety, and it's just a super good ingestion of balancing energy. So the next step on this point, the hand at the 11 just stays there the whole time. The bottom hand stays there the whole time. So the hand at the opposite mid neck, it moves over to the same side above the eyebrow, energy lock number 21. And after a few minutes of that, just one more step. And then the final step is just the middle of the neck on the same side that your hand is at the bottom of the neck. So it's like that. Super, super, super easy to support and activate a very powerful system. Let me just give a plug for some books that we in Jin Shin Jyutsu land love. This is the wonderful book that Alice Burmeister put together many years ago. It was the first big self-help book after Mary's wonderful books. And what Alice, by the way, she married David Burmeister. And what Alice did was she took Mary's self-help books, all three of them. There was four actually, but the three main ones, and she put them together in one book, and then added more information that was taught by Mary and Jiro. It's a super great book. It has lots of testimonials about how well Jin Shin works, you know, in sort of almost like a first aid kind of a help. And I went to, I don't know if you have a Kinko's, we call it Kinko's or FedEx. And I had a spiral binding put on the side, which just makes it much easier to flop open. And I don't know if I'm being proper or kosher to introduce this book, but it's a great book and I think you all like it. Do you have it, Terry?
What is it? The Art of Jin Shin, I do not.
Yes. Well, this is by a student of Philomena Dooley named Alexis Brink. And it's been out for a little while. You can find it on Amazon. But I especially like Alexis's book. And I did put a spiral binding on it. But it's full of color photographs. And it has ailments from A to Z. For example, irritability and itching and immune system and fear, and it's got breast projects and feet and dizziness, and it's all Jin Shin Jyutsu, but it's just in photographs. And I don't know if that's the thing you would want, but I think for self-help, it's just the best thing. So you might look that up. Anxiety is a pretty common thing lately. Someone pointed out the other day that, you know, a decade or so ago, it was fibromyalgia and what was the other one? Just like it. I mean, they were kind of parallel. Anyway, there was these kind of autoimmune type issues going on, and it's still happening, but it's almost like a generational thing. And now the latest thing that seems to be so prevalent is anxiety. And anxiety has been around humanity forever, but it seems like what I get in my workplace is people come in telling me that that's one of their issues, especially younger people. I think it's just too much stimulus, not enough grounding. So there's a few things that you can find in Jin Shin Jyutsu for self-help for anxiety. And one of the really good ones is the kidney flow. And that's easy. You just put one hand at the top of the pubic bone and then you cross your leg. Like my right hand is at the pubic bone and then my left hand is holding my right little toe. And that's a way to begin the kidney flow. Kidneys are a pretty special organ. They're good for raw muscle energy, sexual energy, good for willpower, helping us plot our course and our journey in this amazing, wonderful lifetime. So that's another easy self-help flow that you can look up. And the other 3 steps are quite simple too. Do you have any questions or any comments?
Yeah, if any of you have any questions, unmute yourself, unless you prefer to put them in the chat room.
Who?
Oh. Silence. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Pam. Instead of doing the flow, can you do the finger holds? For example, for kidney, hold the index finger, kidney and bladder flow.
What's the question?
Could you hear me?
You say hold the index finger?
Yeah, instead of the flow itself. Does it have the same benefit?
It does in a frequency level. When you hold the index finger, you're holding the same frequency that the kidney and bladder and the muscle system live on. It's affecting it maybe even more in the attitudinal way, like helping to let go of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's not going to affect your body quite the same way immediately as doing the kidney flow or the bladder flow, but it does affect the subtle frequency that that whole system works on.
Okay, thank you.
Well, here's something wonderful you can teach yourself and other people, and for especially children. I found it's real simple with a group of young children to start talking about their emotions, their attitudes. I might give examples if they're real young kids, to give examples of, well, what is worry and what is fear, what is anger and what is grief, what is trying too hard or trying to try too hard with the 5th depth, the little finger. So what's a wonderful kind of a meditative exercise is just hold your thumb and ask the children to hold their thumbs, and then just to feel something they're worried about or something that concerns them or something that they think about too much. And then just holding the thumb and relaxing with the breath and feeling these feelings as we inhale. And on the exhale, let go of those feelings and have feelings of patience and kindness and love and that sort of thing. It's integrating a different technique with clearing difficult emotions or emotional clutter. And so by using Jin Shin Jyutsu, it's super helpful with this other breathing technique called, you maybe heard of Tong Len. It's a Tibetan, meaning giving and taking. It's done in a prayerful like manner, really, or a meditation, but it's like a prayer, and you can do it for yourself and you can do it for others. You feel the feelings of whatever issue you have, whatever emotion it is. But if you want to get an extra boost with the Jin Shin Jyutsu self-help, you can categorize those feelings, whether it's worry, anger, fear, grief. And then you can hold the finger that relates to that emotion as you're feeling the feeling of that emotion as you inhale. Now, some people say, well, I don't want to inhale that bad emotion. Well, you're not really inhaling the emotion. You already have that in you. That emotion's already present. You've already decided to cling to that emotion. So with the inhale, it's this powerful feminine force of being and helping to bring it up to a light, to bring it to light, to help work with it. So you had that inhale, that powerful inhale, as you hold a finger of that specific emotion and you feel that emotion. And then on the exhale, you exhale kind, loving, patient feelings. And it's another wonderful self-help technique for helping to clear emotional clutter. It works really well. I know this isn't exactly what we call Jin Shin Jyutsu, but really Jin Shin Jyutsu can really encompass everything and anything that is a way to help us harmonize the mind and the body. To me, that's the broader definition of Jin Shin Jyutsu. So if it's okay, Terry, I'll tell a little story about what happened with this process of breathing. About a couple of years ago, it was in December, and I don't think it had anything to do with the holidays. It may have been, but I wasn't sure. But something from my unconscious or subconscious came up, and I was just slammed with a deep, deep feeling of depression. And I normally don't have, I never have that. I've never had that ever before or since. And I don't really carry a lot of depression. I mean, stuff comes and goes in my life, and I can have something for a while and then it goes. But this particular deep feeling of dark, dark depression just hit me this one day. And I didn't know what to do. I thought I should just go home and pull the covers over my head in bed or something. I just was taken by surprise with this deep emotion. So I began to do this Tong Len while holding my fingers to bring up that terrible feeling on the inhale. And at first it's hard to do when it's really difficult. It's like it's hard to move it. But once you give it a few inhale and exhales, so I would pull that up and then exhale kind, loving, spacious, patient, loving feelings. And I mean, within 10 cycles of my breathing, that deep, dark, gunky feeling went away. It's just an amazing way to help clear emotional clutter. And I think with Jin Shin Jyutsu, it like enhances that ability even more. So I thought I could share that. I'm sharing things that aren't always Jin Shin Jyutsu, so I don't know if Terry will ever invite me back, but.
Oh, you're off the list. There's a big cross against your name now.
Well, life is big and you find all kinds of things that help, but for general help, self-help, Jin Shin Jyutsu is so powerful. We had the good experience of this spring of my son married his sweetheart, and we got to have guests from around the country come for this big wedding that they had. And my wife's sisters, they both live in San Diego, and Marcia came, and she had for weeks been having this issue with pain behind her eyes. I think it was mostly behind one eye. But anyway, she had pain behind her eyes, and she had gone to several eye specialists, and no one, they did scans and they did tests, and they really couldn't find the source of that and didn't understand why she was having that. So Joyce has known that I've been into something called Jin Shin Jyutsu for a long, long time, but she's never really inquired much about it. And I've never pushed much on, my relatives. If they're curious, I'm happy to tell them all I know. But so she was having this issue. So I went to the self-help book and looked it up, and there was eye pain. And it was something simple like one hand behind on energy lock number 4 at the base of the skull where the neck meets the skull. And the other hand, I believe, was just under the collarbone. So this is one of the positions that Mary Burmeister has brought from Jiro Murai to help with clearing eye pain. So she was wondering how long. I said, well, give it a good 10 minutes. Just hold it for a good 10 minutes. So she did that on and off for that afternoon, didn't talk about it, but just did that on and off. And then the next day, she was at the motel and she calls me up and she says, well, I don't want to jinx it, but this eye pain is going away. And I don't know why, but I'm just doing this simple Jin Shin Jyutsu hold, and it's it opens these circuits to allow the energy to clear and become unencumbered so that the body can restore itself. And to this day, she does that hold whenever she has any beginning of eye pain. A couple of years ago, I went for a long walk, and it's a busy work week, and I tend to hold a lot of tension in my jaws from stress, from just day-to-day, work-a-day world, working closely with people and so forth. So I was having tight jaws. And so I began to do some jaw stretches on this long walk. And for jaw help, and also tight jaws can cause ringing in the ears. So ear ringing or tinnitus, or I get that too. So Deepak Chopra, on one of his courses, he explains that you can do these long vowel sounds, moving your jaw to loosen the jaws up, to help with ringing in the ears and just tight jaws. So I was doing this ya, yay, you, ya, yay, you. So I was doing ya, yay, you, and you do it, you exaggerate those sounds, you exaggerate those motions with your jaws. Well, typical me, I was overdoing it. And so later that evening, the jaw work began to mess with one of my inner ears. I had, thanks to my exuberance for wanting to get rid of my jaw tension, I caused an earache. And it was pretty intense. And as a child, I'd have those a lot because I would enjoy swimming a lot and too often get earaches. So I knew all about that. And I knew that this earache was bad and I was in trouble, and I was no way going to be able to go to sleep that night because I was suffering with this earache. And I really don't tend to take Advil or Tylenol or aspirin. I wouldn't say they're bad to take, but I just rather not take anything if I don't have to. So I was not happy. And before I took anything, which I normally don't, I went to the self-help book and looked up earache, and there was a simple, I forget the hold. It was something on my upper body. It was like a 13 and maybe a opposite 4, something like that. The very simple hold. And I held that hold for about 10 minutes, and the earache just quieted right down. And within another 10 minutes, I was able to go to sleep and woke up the next day with no earache. So that was a huge relief for me to find something that worked so quickly for something that was so painful. So another thing that I learned from one of our Jin Shin Jyutsu teachers long ago is helpful for just relieving neck tension, especially if it's just along the back of your neck, along the cervical vertebrae. So if you'd like to try this, we can just do this while I talk or answer questions. You place the left hand on the upper chest in the middle, just at the sternum, and there's a little, on most of us, there's a little knot, a little bump there, just below the throat. There's the throat, and then about 2.5 inches down is this little bump. You probably find that. Then the right hand actually starts below the cervical, just about thoracic 1 or 2. So you're below the neck, and it's just the fingertips below the neck, holding the cervical, and you just hold these positions, I'd say for a good minute each, maybe 2 minutes, and you just slowly, I would say a minute's plenty actually. So you just hold each bump or each vertebrae on the right hand going up the neck for about a minute each, maybe less if you feel like you feel the flow, you feel the pulses. But you just go up each vertebrae, up and up and up, all the way to the very, very top. And that is such a relief for our often chronic neck tension from doing so many Zoom meetings, staring into the computer. But that's a way to help clear the neck. And one of the teachings that is in one of the practitioner books from Mary, from Jiro through Mary. By the way, Jiro, and Terry knows a lot more about Jiro than I do, but what little I know is that he was a real scholar into studying everything he could about how to help the body's energy system. And he was a student of Chinese medicine along with acupuncture. And something that I never learned in acupuncture school, and it's just been such a help to me, that Jiro exposed or brought forth the information, the knowledge that the neck vertebrae, the top of the back, the thoracic 1 and 2, and then all the neck vertebrae support the frequency that helps first depth or earth. So I find a lot of dizziness issues, a lot of people with dizziness is most often a earth frequency or first depth, as we call it in Jin Shin Jyutsu, issue. So by relieving the neck of its tension, it's helping that whole first depth, stomach, spleen, skin, supports the immune system, many other things. But that's a wonderful way to also to support that frequency, that depth. And then the other, if I remember correctly, the sternum helps with fourth depth. So I don't know of any releases about the sternum. Of course, there's the main central where you have the right hand on top of your head and you're taking your left fingers or hands and going down the front. And so he related that the sternum has a frequency connection with fourth depth, water, kidney, bladder. And then then there's other depths along the midline of the body. There's about the middle of the back helps the frequency that goes with lungs and large intestine. I believe it's only one area, thoracic 11, the 11th vertebrae of the back, the thoracic vertebrae. And then let's see. Oh yeah, another really important one. I work on my patients a lot when they come in with issues of joint inflexibility. They give me the label. They tell me about arthritis. Well, arthritis can be cleared out. It's not a lifelong have-to-have thing. You can clear it out using Jin Shin Jyutsu self-help. And the sacrum, the little bundle of bones at the base of the spine, and its partner, the coccyx, the tailbone. Jiro pointed out that that has a frequency connection with liver gallbladder, third depth. So when I hear arthritis or inflexibility, of joint pain, than I know to help work with third depth or liver gallbladder. And you can just put both hands under the sacrum as a person lies down. You can put them on yourself. You can just put both hands side by side on the sacrum. And that's a very comforting way and simple way to help with that frequency that works with inflexibility of the body and the mind, and helps with the emotions of anger, frustration, the fear the right thing won't happen. And of course, on the physical level, it just helps with the larger joints, the hips and the shoulders, helps open those systems up. So.
Wow. A lot of interesting insight there, folks, and some tips, some of which I'd quite forgotten, or I'm not even sure that I was shown before. But
well, there's so much, Terry. It's just,
yeah.
it takes decades to grasp so much of what's available.
Well, I'm so glad that you've drawn out some of the simpler placements from some of the larger flows, which Mary didn't particularly put in the self-help books, but are nonetheless effective as self-help.
Yeah.
So that's a really great addition. So really appreciate that. Has anyone got any pressing questions? I saw Suzanne asking about arthritis there. Tom, do you want to unmute yourself?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you use the word frequency, are you referring to something that can be measured like cycles per second type of frequency, or how do you define frequency?
Well, yes, thank you for asking that. For years, actually, after my first 5 days in my first intensive Jin Shin Jyutsu class, I had been accustomed to knowing a little bit about the so-called 5 elements, which in the Chinese system, they call it fire, metal, wood, water, and earth. And after that first Jin Shin Jyutsu class, they were talking about depths. And for some reason, I didn't equate depths with the elements. And that whole thing went right over my head. And I just thought, well, what the heck is a depth after 5 days? So in my practice and in trying to break things down for people to understand, by the way, you know, when you translate language, you often lose a lot of the meaning. And I think what happened with the so-called elements was that the Greeks used that word. They use elements. They had their system and they had elements. And so when we've interpreted what the Chinese were bringing us with their system, we said elements. But it's hard to grasp why that word. We use words so we can talk about other elements. And Jiro had a brilliant idea of using the term depths because we do have different levels of energy in us. And he found that first depth was on the surface, and second depth was a little deeper, and third depth was a little deeper, and took care of different elements and different metabolisms and so forth. And so the depth thing makes sense too. But I just came up with this word, the idea of using the word frequency, because I imagine there are some devices that could measure frequencies, but I don't know of any. So I have to say that I just threw that term out there with no real knowledge that there are these things that are measurable in different frequencies. I mean, we emit a certain frequency of light. What's real popular in some clinics in in the West, and almost every clinic in Asia has these things called far infrared lamps. And they're on the far edge of the infrared spectrum. And they use those lamps hovering over the body because they help relax and help the circulation of the soft tissue of the body. But it just so happens that now we have devices that can measure frequencies that the average human body gives off. And we give off, I don't know the number, but let's just say, well, I don't need to give you a number, but what we emit as a live being, a human, is very, very close to that far infrared frequency. So they found that the frequency of that infrared lamp is very close to our own average human frequency. So it's obvious that everything has frequencies, colors, different elements, everything has its own, you can call it a frequency. Now, how much of all that is, it must be measurable, but what makes colors different is because they have different light frequencies. They're on a different spot on the visible light spectrum. So I use the word frequency, my friend, because I think it helps our Western mind when we're attuned to radio waves and electricity. It just helps them to realize that different elements or different depths are helping different systems in the body that actually operate on a little bit different frequency than the other frequencies. So that's why. Does that make sense, or does that
Yeah,
help?
it's a very good word to use. I've done a lot of work with brain frequencies, and of course, it's a
Yes.
Fourier transformation. In other words, each one has something, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, thanks. I appreciate the feedback. It just sounds like a better word to use than simply element, because that, well, what is a metal? So what, the lungs and the colon are under metal or under second depth, but frequency gives it a little more
Yeah.
touchable, holdable understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the elements, images, schema, if you like, sometimes you can think of them as just solid objects, but in fact, as they move, as energy moves, it transforms from one thing into another. And I've always seen that as key to understanding energy, is the transformation from one thing to another. And I think during that transformation, there may well be a change in frequency and vibration for liver to move to heart frequency or to burden spleen frequency. There has to be some change of some sort in order to achieve that. Does that make some sense?
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, as you know, in Jin Shin Jyutsu, Jiro understood that certain depths or elements or frequencies, they support, as they transform, they support, like you can even visualize, well, wood, what we call wood, in that Chinese system, wood supports fire. Makes sense. And so I guess there's a transformation from the wood as it is consumed and it becomes fire and so forth and so on. So there is a transformation. I think that's right.
Yeah. And, I tend to always experience it in the sense of an energetic transformation, which implies a change in frequency and vibration, certainly from a physics point of view.
There you go. Yeah.
So we're coming, wow. We're very close to the end, actually. I want to thank Mark. I've known Mark quite a long time. I didn't really say anything at the beginning, but I met Mark shortly after I began working at Jin Shin Jyutsu over the phone. He was and we talked over the phone, and then he came to Scottsdale on occasion and did some of the mentoring classes. And he clearly has a broad understanding of the energy matrix of Jin Shin Jyutsu and acupuncture. And, it is an art. Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art. And Mark pointed out Alexis Brink's book there. And I know he was a little concerned that I was going to go, ooh.
Well, I didn't know what was kosher or not.
What was the name of the breathing work?
Tong Len. You can look it up. It's really one word. It's TONG Len. And it's very, you can do it for others. You can witness, even while you're watching the news, you see some suffering child and you can feel their feelings as you inhale to bring that energy up. And then you can exhale kind, loving, spacious feelings. And as you know, with quantum physics, one place on one part of the planet can affect another place on the other part of the planet. So it can be used for others or yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to say, folks, it's like we're artists, and as we progress, I believe, in our practice of Jin Shin Jyutsu or any other art which is similar to that, we get insights, and there are variations on a theme. And if I wanted to look at what Mark was describing there, in Jin Shin Jyutsu, my understanding of the exhale is we're letting go in order to build. And so Mark talked about on the exhale, you know, bringing in the thoughts of positivity. Now, that is perfect because in terms of Jin Shin Jyutsu, we talk about the thoughts, words, and deeds, and the thoughts beginning at the bas line. Well, as we're breathing out, we breathe out from the 4, which is bas line, all the way down to the 15 to the hips. We do go through the waistline. Mary just often missed different levels because she felt it was simpler for people to understand head, hip, and feet. But as we're exhaling, we're letting go in order to build something new. So thinking of something positive is building something new. On the inhale, we are purifying. And when we purify, we will bring up that emotion most times. So I don't see a great difference between the understandings there.
Yeah.
I think it's just a different aspect of the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, someone's already asked, can I bring you back? because
I can wing it some more. I didn't know I'd last this long. I thought I'd be able to talk for about 15 minutes, but
well, I mean, yeah, you saved me some work, but although it's more like play for me. But what I'm going to do just before we say au revoir to everyone is just a quick look at the Jin Shin Jyutsu website, which hasn't been that active of late. I'm just going to share my screen and show some folks what's going on. Don't go away, everybody.
Well, I'll just say I was just glad to just see everybody on here, Tom and Pam and Jasmine and whoever else came in, but it was nice to be a part of a like-minded, like-spirited group.
Yeah, stay with us. Okay, so coming up tomorrow, in fact, if you like these 2-hour webinars, these special topic webinars, Sarah Harper and Jill Pasquinelli are teaching for 2 hours from 2 o'clock New York time. Be resilient, balance, relax, harmonize with Jin Shin. And talking there about harmonizing stress and anxiety. You can register there, and there's all the different ways of doing it. And it's yours truly with Debbie Rappaport are going to be, her and I are going to be hosting Jill and Sarah tomorrow. Coming up is an online basic seminar with Kelly Mount, who's a new instructor, and she's going to be presenting from August the 9th to the 15th. All the information is there. The organizers, Susan and Maggie, and you can register there. Then October the 14th, we've got Sarah, and she's going to be teaching the art of being a practitioner in talent, and that's in Oregon. And that's going to be, I believe, with Debbie again. Yeah, Debbie Rappaport, who actually lives in Talent, Oregon. And you can contact them there or register today. And finally, if there's anything that you would like to see that's happened already, you can click on any of these links and you can get the replays. All right. So that is a little bit of a reminder of what's coming up. And if any of those courses interest you, then go to the homepage of Jin Shin Jyutsu, jsjinc.net. All right, well, So everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. I know that we love to have different presenters. And as I always like to say, if any of you would like to come on, do not hesitate. Just drop me a line. It's the Harmonize 2Energize at gmail.com now, because I'm out of the office, so I don't receive from there. But it's this email. Let's hold on. H2E Energize spell at gmail.com. Mark, while I'm doing this,
Yes.
I think you said you hadn't got any classes or anything coming up that you were teaching, any self-help?
No, I've done lots of self-help classes, but I don't have anything just coming up soon.
Okay. So is there any contact that people could, any contact number or email if people wanted to?
Well, if they want to give me an email, I'm okay to answer questions through email. Would that be okay?
Yeah, what's your email?
It's my name, Mark, M-A-R-K, Hovis,
Mhm.
H-O-V as in Victor, I-S, Mark Hovis, at sbcglobal.net. That's sbcglobal.net.
Yeah.
samboycatglobal.net.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. So if I put it in the chat, folks. So if any of you are interested in contacting Mark, he is also an acupuncturist. So if you're in Tulsa and you'd like a treatment, you might want to email him ahead and see if he can
Come into Tulsa. It's a nice town.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Mark. That was a lot of interesting tips, as I said earlier, and something, you know, that for us all to remember. With self-help, we are the artist. Explore, see if some of these approaches work for you, and share them with other people. That's the beauty of self-help. We can do it on ourselves, and then we can self-prove or not, and then maybe share with other people.
Yeah.
To me, Jin Shin Jyutsu is all about the sharing aspect as well. You know, we help ourselves and we help others. So that was a very nourishing presentation, Mark. So
Thanks. I'm glad I could share.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Terry. We'll be in touch.
Yeah. So everybody, you all take care. You have a good rest of the day, weekend, and following week. And I'll be back with maybe just me, myself, I, or maybe another mystery presenter next Friday, same time here on Zoom. All right, everybody. I'm just going to stop the recording.